Singing is my most worshipful mode. When the pandemic was raging and we could not gather together for worship, I longed for the day when we would be able to sing together again. So I never take it for granted when we open our hymnals and, as the book says, sing our living tradition. I consider this a sacred text, and I will be preaching from it this morning. So feel free to have it to hand, to look at lyrics as we go through. I am very much a fan of our teal hymnal. I enjoy that more modern, contemporary, and multicultural selection of songs found there. But there is something warm, familiar, and comforting, maybe even a little nostalgic, about these simple songs found in the front of our gray hymnal. One of my favorite aspects of hymnody, big fancy theology school word, hymnody, is the tradition of overwriting hymns, taking the tune of an established hymn that would be familiar to the congregation to sing and updating the lyrics to reflect the current theology. This has been happening since sacred songs were being sung. Hymn number 6, which we sang earlier, just as long as I have breath, is one of these updated hymns. The tune was originally composed in Germany in the 1700s, and there are many different lyrics set to it, even in English. However, the lyrics that Alicia Carpenter wrote in 1981, the ones that we sang today, are a significant deviation. First of all, this was the first time that this song was updated to be a humanist hymn. There's no God language to be found here. And the theology is active and affirming and individual. I must answer yes. Yes to life, yes to truth. And if they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love. The word best is doing a lot of work here. Each of us has our own interpretation, of course, of what that might mean. Why bother to overwrite a traditional hymn? Why not create something completely new and fresh? Alicia Carpenter has passed, so we can't go directly to her for an answer, but I suspect part of the reason is it's easier. Choose an old tune in the public domain, and half of the work is done for you. And I would suggest that another reason was to capture the historicity of that tune, all those feelings of warmth and comfort and nostalgia. Although the lyrics reflect our modern sensibilities and our active values, the tune grounds them firmly back to the beginning of our living tradition. It puts down roots to nourish the new leaves of the lyrics. And so it goes with our Unitarian Universalist values. We often refer to values as timeless, but in truth, we understand them differently across time. And we, here, Unitarian Universalists, we make a practice, a formal practice of reflecting on our values, measuring them against our current expectations, experiences, and relationships, practicing them in ways that meet the needs of our time. As individuals, we explore our values as part of our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. As an association, it is built into our UUA bylaws that we will re-examine and possibly re-articulate our values every 15 years or so through the appointing of commissions. Our faith is dynamic and fluid and practical. So what then is our modern religious spiritual understanding of love? Is love too dynamic and fluid? Is it too dynamic and fluid to be practical? During Valentine's Week, we are given many consumerist suggestions for grand romantic gestures, but that's not what we're looking for here. Love can feel like such a nebulous concept that it helps to get granular. As Gail read earlier, we need to be careful with the crumbs, the little chances to love, tiny gestures, the morsels that feed, the minims. Now, this hymn offers one such suggestion for a particular action, one crumb in verse 3. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. There's a crick in my neck that I feel. There's this little crunchiness at that line, because there are so many different ways that we could interpret it, right? I'm certain that in the context of this hymn, we are being called to a healthy covenantal relationship where we mutually agree on how we will treat one another. But I can imagine a scenario where a blanket statement like this one could be weaponized, insisting that someone tolerates ongoing harm or abuse under the label of love accepting all. So we need to get some clarity around living our love. In her essay, Values, Living a Love Ethic, womanist author Bell Hooks shares these specifics. Embracing a love ethic, she writes, means that we utilize all the dimensions of love: care, commitment, trust, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. All of these in our everyday lives. We can successfully do this, she continues, only by cultivating awareness. Being aware enables us to critically examine our actions to see what is needed, so that we can give care, be responsible, show respect, and indicate a willingness to learn. Now we're getting to specifics. Being aware, being truly present in our relationships and our communities, and asking the questions, what care is needed? How can I be responsible and respectful? Are the first steps in saying yes to love. We can also employ that willingness to learn by asking directly, how do you want to be loved? What does support look like for you? Actions taken with a loving intention, but that are harmful, are not received as love. But when we raise our awareness, when we enter into a mutual accountability, and just the act of asking what someone needs demonstrates our love and respect. Hooks continues, understanding knowledge as an essential element of love is vital because we are daily bombarded with messages that tell us love is about mystery, about that which cannot be known. I must answer yes to truth. A covenant is a sacred agreement of how we intend to be with one another. It is a declaration of embodied love, and it is the organizing principle of our faith. When Unitarian Universalists gather for faith sharing or committee work or structuring an entire congregation, we create a covenant. We get specific about how we want to be loved and shown respect. And we should be clear about what we will do when we inevitably fail to live up to those expectations. Our covenants are living documents. Just as our understanding of our values changes, the details of living those values evolves as well. When our awareness of injustice grows, our practices of care and responsibility must adapt to meet those challenges. My colleague, Kimberly Debus, suggests, very tongue-in-cheek, a further rewrite for verse 3 of hymn 6. She writes, "Disappointment pierced me through, and then I named the problem. I called you back in. We talked about the harm. We developed a plan for reconciliation. We kept each other accountable. And then I kept on loving you." Very clear steps, no mystery there. I suspect that if this hymn were rewritten today, what would be changed is the pronouns. Rather than I and you, it would be we and us. We have moved to a much more communal understanding of love in the decades since this was rewritten. We see this in our proposed new values statement. It names love as our central value and arranges our other values as aspects of love around it, like petals around the center of a flower. We live our love through interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity. And by loving each other, we grow in our understanding of each of these other values. Our value statement for transformation reads, "We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete, never perfect." And for generosity, we cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, our presence, and our resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. We live our love by being open to its transforming power, becoming aware of our needs and each other's needs, and taking loving action to meet one another in mutual care. And not just one heart to another. We allow our communities to be transformed as well. We look outward to cultivate awareness of needs and to ask, what does love look like? What does care look like? What does support look like? How can we serve in love? Serve our larger community, serve our society, serve our planet and its other inhabitants. And when we mess up, we open to further transformation. In the words of Hope Johnson, apologizing and forgiving with humility, being forgiven through grace, creating the beloved community together. Toward the end of our service this morning, we are going to sing another hymn, 131, Love Will Guide Us. Many of you know it. This is another hymn with 1980s lyrics written over a traditional tune. There are quite a few of these in the gray hymnal, by the way. In this one, however, I think the pronouns are spot on. The first verse addresses us as a whole community, stating that love and hope will guide us, all of us, on the road from greed to giving. We will be transformed from individuals holding on to our gifts and skills into a generous congregation taking collective action in the world. But what if you don't know what you have to offer? Do we need what you can give? Yes, we do. The second verse acts as an aside to assure you, the individual. If you cannot sing like angels, no problem. If you cannot speak before thousands, unnecessary. You can give from deep within you. If you allow love to transform and direct your generosity, you can change the world with your love. And then it invites each of us back into the fold. Love will guide us, all of us, through the hard night. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.